Everyone dreams about success. People dream about achieving their goals, building something meaningful, and creating a life they are proud of. They imagine the victory, the recognition, and the moment when everything finally works out. But what most people don't imagine is the road that leads there. Because the road to success is rarely smooth. It is filled with obstacles. It is filled with rejection. It is filled with moments when things don't go the way you planned. And in those moments, many people begin to believe something dangerous. They believe failure means the end. They believe failure means they are not talented enough, not smart enough, or not capable enough to succeed. So they stop trying. They walk away from their dreams, not because success was impossible, but because failure felt too painful. But here is the truth that separates successful people from those who quit. Failure is not the opposite of success. Failure is part of the path to success. Every person who has achieved something great has experienced failure. Behind every achievement is a story of mistakes, setbacks, and moments of doubt. The difference is not that successful people never fail. The difference is that they learn how to turn failure into fuel for growth. They turn mistakes into lessons. They turn setbacks into strength. They turn disappointment into determination. Instead of letting failure stop them, they use it to become better, stronger, and wiser. And that is exactly what this message is about. In this journey, we are going to explore 5 powerful truths that will completely change the way you see failure. You will learn why failure is not the end, but the beginning of growth. You will understand why every successful person has a story of struggle. You will discover how failure builds strength, discipline, and character. You will learn how changing your perspective can transform failure into feedback. And most importantly, you will see how failure can become the fuel for your greatest comeback. Because the truth is simple, failure is not what defines your future. Your response to failure does. So if you have ever felt discouraged, if you have ever felt like giving up, if you have ever wondered whether success is still possible for you, then this message is for you. Because sometimes the greatest success stories begin with failure. And by the end of this journey, you may realize something powerful. The failures you feared the most may actually be the lessons that lead you to your greatest victory. 1. Failure is not the end. It is the lesson. There is a moment in every person's life when things don't go the way they hoped. A moment when the plan falls apart. A moment when the effort doesn't produce the result they expected. Maybe you studied hard but failed the exam. Maybe you worked on a dream but it collapsed. Maybe you trusted someone but they let you down. And in that moment, a dangerous thought begins to whisper in your mind. Maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe I'm not meant for this. Maybe I should just stop trying. But here is the truth most people never understand. Failure is not the end of the story. Failure is the beginning of the lesson. Failure is not proof that you are weak. Failure is proof that you had the courage to try. Think about that. Most people spend their lives avoiding failure. They avoid risks. They avoid challenges. They avoid opportunities. Why? Because they are afraid of what people will say, afraid of embarrassment, afraid of looking foolish. So they stay safe. But the problem with staying safe is this: nothing grows in the comfort zone. Every great achievement in history was built on a mountain of failures. Before the success, there were mistakes. Before the victory, there were losses. Before the breakthrough, there were countless attempts that didn't work. The difference between those who succeed and those who quit is not talent. It is persistence through failure. When you fail, something powerful happens. Failure forces you to learn. Success can sometimes make people comfortable. Success can make people careless. Success can even make people stop growing. But failure wakes you up. Failure forces you to ask questions. What went wrong? What can I do better? What must I change? Failure becomes a teacher. And sometimes the greatest lessons in life only appear after things fall apart. Imagine a person learning to walk. When a child first tries to walk, they fall, again and again. But imagine if that child thought the way many adults do. Imagine if the child fell once and said, "Walking is not for me." If that happened, no one would ever learn to walk. But children do something powerful. They fall, they stand up, they try again. They don't see failure as defeat. They see it as part of learning. Somewhere along the way, as we grow older, we forget this. We start believing that failure means we are not capable. But that belief is a lie. Every mistake carries information. Every setback carries wisdom. Every failure carries a lesson that success could never teach. Sometimes failure teaches patience. Sometimes it teaches humility. Sometimes it teaches discipline. Sometimes it teaches us that we need to prepare better. And sometimes, failure teaches us that the path we chose was not the right one. But even that is valuable. Because every wrong path eliminates confusion and moves you closer to the right one. Think about the strongest people you know, the people who inspire others, the people who build something meaningful. Their strength did not come from easy victories. Their strength came from challenges, from disappointments, from moments when they had every reason to give up, but they chose not to. Failure does something else that is very important. It builds resilience. Resilience is the ability to stand up after life knocks you down, and life will knock everyone down at some point. No one escapes struggle. No one escapes difficulty. No one escapes failure. But the people who rise in life understand something powerful. They understand that falling down is not the problem. Staying down is the problem. Every time you stand up after failure, you become stronger. Every time you try again, you become wiser. Every time you refuse to quit, you build a mindset that success cannot ignore. Because success is not just about talent. Success is about endurance. It is about the willingness to keep going when things are hard. It is about learning from mistakes instead of being defined by them. So the next time you fail, don't ask yourself, "Why did this happen to me?" Instead ask, "What is this trying to teach me?" Because every failure contains a hidden message. Maybe it is telling you to prepare more. Maybe it is telling you to change your strategy. Maybe it is telling you to become stronger before the next opportunity arrives. But if you are willing to listen, failure will guide you. It will shape you. It will prepare you. And one day, when you finally achieve the success you dreamed of, you will look back at your failures differently. You will realize something powerful. The failures you once hated were actually the lessons that made your success possible. They taught you patience when you were impatient. They taught you discipline when you were careless. They taught you persistence when you felt like quitting. Failure was never your enemy. Failure was your teacher. So if you have failed recently, if something in your life did not work out, if a dream seems broken, do not let that moment define you. Let it refine you. Stand up again. Learn the lesson. Adjust your path and keep moving forward, because failure is not the end. Failure is simply the lesson that prepares you for success. 2. Every successful person has a failure story. Look at any successful person in the world. A great entrepreneur, a famous athlete, a respected leader, a brilliant artist. From the outside, their lives look extraordinary. People see the success. They see the achievements. They see the recognition. And many people assume something that is completely wrong. They assume those people were always successful. They assume everything worked out easily for them. They assume they were simply lucky. But what most people never see is the long story of failure behind every success. The truth is simple. Every successful person has a failure story. Behind every great victory are moments of rejection. Behind every breakthrough are years of mistakes. Behind every achievement are days when things almost fell apart. Success rarely happens in a straight line. It happens through trial and error, through setbacks, through painful lessons. But here is the difference between successful people and those who quit. Successful people did not stop when things became difficult. They continued when others walked away. Think about the early stage of any dream. In the beginning, the path is uncertain. There are doubts, there are obstacles, there are moments when nothing seems to work. Many people start with excitement. They begin with passion. They begin with big dreams. But the first failure appears, and suddenly their belief begins to shake. The first rejection arrives, and they begin to question themselves. The first setback happens, and they start wondering if the dream is even possible. And that is the exact moment when most people quit, not because the dream is impossible, but because the journey became uncomfortable. People often believe successful individuals never struggled, but the opposite is true. Successful people struggle more than most. They simply refuse to let struggle stop them. Every rejection they face becomes motivation. Every mistake becomes a lesson. Every setback becomes preparation for the next attempt. They understand something powerful. Failure is not the opposite of success. Failure is part of success. Imagine someone trying to build something meaningful. They launch an idea. It fails. They try again. It fails again. They adjust their strategy. They learn new skills. They try again. Slowly, progress begins. But if they had stopped after the first failure, the success would never exist. The world celebrates winners, but the world rarely sees the invisible battles behind victory, the sleepless nights, the self-doubt, the criticism from others, the fear of trying again after things went wrong. Every successful person has faced those moments, moments when they wondered if they should give up, moments when quitting seemed easier than continuing. But the people who achieve great things make one powerful decision. They decide to continue, even when progress is slow, even when people doubt them, even when the path becomes uncertain. Persistence is the quiet power behind success. It is not loud, it is not glamorous, but it is unstoppable. Persistence means getting up one more time, trying one more time, believing one more time. Most people underestimate how close they were to success when they gave up. Sometimes the breakthrough is only one more attempt away, one more improvement, one more lesson learned from failure. But when people quit too early, they never discover how close they were. Success often belongs to those who simply stayed in the game longer, not because they were smarter, not because they were more talented, but because they refused to stop trying. They accepted that failure was part of the journey. They understood that rejection was not a final answer. They believed that mistakes were simply steps toward improvement. And over time, something powerful happens. Each failure strengthens them. Each setback sharpens their thinking. Each challenge builds their resilience. Eventually, all the lessons begin to connect. All the struggles begin to make sense. And what once looked like repeated failure becomes the foundation of success. When people finally see the achievement, they call it overnight success. But it was never overnight. It was years of effort, years of learning, years of persistence. So if you are facing rejection right now, if your progress feels slow, if your efforts seem unnoticed, remember this truth. You are not alone. Every successful person once stood exactly where you are. Doubting, struggling, trying to figure things out. The difference is they kept going. They did not allow temporary failure to become permanent defeat. They understood that success is not reserved for the lucky. It is earned by the persistent. So do not let rejection stop you. Do not let mistakes discourage you. Do not let setbacks convince you to quit. Instead, let them strengthen your determination. Because one day, when your success finally arrives, people will look at your achievements and admire the result. But you will know the truth. You will know that behind your success was a story of failures that you refused to let define you. And that is what makes success meaningful. Because every successful person has a failure story. And persistence is what turns that story into victory. 3. Failure builds strength and character. There is something about failure that most people fear. The word itself feels heavy. It feels uncomfortable. It feels like something to avoid at all costs. People do everything they can to escape it. They play safe. They avoid risks. They stay in familiar places where nothing challenges them, because deep down, they believe failure will break them. But here is a powerful truth most people discover too late in life. Failure does not break strong people. Failure creates strong people. Think about the strongest individuals you know, the ones who remain calm during chaos, the ones who stand firm when life becomes difficult, the ones who rise after being knocked down. Those people were not born with extraordinary strength. Their strength was built. And most of that strength came from difficult moments, moments when things did not go their way. Failure has a strange way of revealing who we truly are. When everything is easy, anyone can appear confident. When life is comfortable, anyone can appear strong. But when things fall apart, when plans collapse, when effort turns into disappointment, that is when character is revealed. And that is also when character is built. Failure forces people to face reality. It removes the illusion that success comes easily. It teaches something far more valuable: resilience. Resilience is the ability to keep moving forward even when the road becomes rough. It is the ability to stand up after falling. And failure gives people practice in doing exactly that. The first time someone fails, it feels painful. It feels embarrassing. It feels discouraging. But something interesting happens when people refuse to quit. They try again. They fail again. They adjust. They try again. Slowly, their mindset begins to change. Failure stops feeling like the end. Instead, it begins to feel like part of the process. This is where resilience begins to grow. Each setback strengthens emotional endurance. Each disappointment builds inner toughness. Each challenge trains the mind to remain steady under pressure. Without failure, this strength never develops. But failure builds more than resilience. It also builds discipline. Discipline is what keeps people moving forward when motivation disappears. When someone fails, they often realize something important. They realize they must improve. Maybe they need better preparation. Maybe they need stronger focus. Maybe they need more patience. Failure becomes a mirror that reflects areas where growth is needed. And when people are willing to face that reflection honestly, discipline begins to form. They start waking up earlier. They start working harder. They start studying more. They start practicing when others rest. Why? Because failure showed them what comfort never could. Failure showed them the gap between where they are and where they want to be. And discipline becomes the bridge that closes that gap. But perhaps the most powerful thing failure builds is emotional strength. Life will never be completely smooth. There will always be uncertainty. There will always be challenges. There will always be moments when things feel overwhelming. Failure teaches people how to face those moments. When someone experiences setbacks and still continues moving forward, their emotional muscles grow stronger. Just like physical muscles grow stronger through resistance, emotional strength grows through difficulty. The pressure of failure forces people to adapt. It pushes them to think differently. It pushes them to become creative. When the first plan fails, they create a second plan. When the second plan fails, they find a third. Failure forces innovation. Failure pushes people beyond their comfort zone. Comfort zones feel safe, but they are also places where growth slows down. Failure pushes people outside that space. It forces them to explore new possibilities, to learn new skills, to challenge old beliefs. And in doing so, people discover something powerful. They discover abilities they never knew they had. Many of the world's most determined individuals were shaped by failure. They faced rejection. They faced disappointment. They faced obstacles that seemed impossible. But those moments forged something powerful inside them. Determination. Determination is not born from comfort, it is born from struggle. When someone has been knocked down but chooses to stand again, something inside them changes. They become harder to defeat. They become more focused. They become more committed to their purpose. Failure turns ordinary people into determined individuals, and determined individuals are difficult to stop. Think of failure like pressure shaping a diamond. Without pressure, the diamond would never exist. In the same way, without challenge, strength remains hidden. Failure reveals it. Failure develops it. Failure sharpens it. So if you are facing failure right now, if something in your life feels like it went wrong, do not see it as a sign that you are weak. See it as the moment your strength is being built. Every challenge you overcome is shaping your character. Every mistake you learn from is sharpening your mind. Every setback you rise from is strengthening your spirit. One day you will look back at these difficult moments and realize something powerful. Those failures were not destroying you. They were preparing you. They were building the resilience, discipline, and emotional strength needed for the success ahead. Because in the end, a failure does not create weak people. Failure creates powerful individuals who refuse to stay down. For change your perspective on failure, there is a moment in life that almost everyone experiences. A moment when you try your best, but things still don't work out. You put in the effort, you invest your time, you believe in the result, and yet the outcome is not what you expected. The plan fails. The opportunity disappears. The dream seems to fall apart, and in that moment, many people immediately reach the same painful conclusion. I failed. But the real question is not whether something failed. The real question is how you choose to see it, because the way you look at failure determines what happens next. Some people see failure as defeat. They believe failure means they are not talented enough, not smart enough, not capable enough. And once they believe that, they stop trying. But there is another way to see failure, a way that successful people understand very well. They do not see failure as defeat. They see failure as feedback. Feedback is information. It tells you something about what happened. It shows you what worked and what didn't. And when you see failure this way, something powerful changes. Instead of asking, "Why am I not good enough?" you begin asking a better question. What can I do differently next time? This shift in perspective changes everything. Failure no longer becomes a wall, it becomes a guide. Think about it like this. Imagine a scientist performing an experiment. The first attempt doesn't work. The second attempt doesn't work. The third attempt fails as well. Does the scientist suddenly conclude that they are incapable? No, they analyze the results, they adjust the method, they test again. Each failure gives them more information. Each attempt brings them closer to the correct solution. Life works the same way. Every attempt gives you feedback. Every mistake teaches you something. Every setback reveals a weakness in the strategy. But it does not mean there is a weakness in you. Sometimes people confuse these two things. They believe that because something didn't work, it means they cannot succeed. But that is not true. Failure usually means only one thing. The strategy needs improvement. Maybe the timing was wrong. Maybe the preparation was not enough. Maybe the approach needs adjustment. But none of these things define your potential. Success rarely comes from doing the same thing over and over again without change. Success often comes when people learn to adapt. When something doesn't work, they study the result. They refine their approach. They try again with greater knowledge. And slowly the process improves. Imagine trying to unlock a door with the wrong key. If the key doesn't work, does that mean the door can never be opened? Of course not. It simply means you need a different key. Failure works the same way. It tells you that the current method is not the right key, so you search for another one. The people who succeed in life are not the ones who never fail. They are the ones who learn quickly from failure. They treat mistakes like lessons. They treat setbacks like instructions. Instead of quitting, they ask better questions. What did this experience teach me? What can I change? How can I improve the next attempt? And every time they ask those questions, they grow wiser, they grow more strategic, they grow more prepared. Eventually, their improved approach produces better results. But this transformation begins with one important decision, the decision to change your perspective. If you see failure as defeat, you stop moving. If you see failure as feedback, you keep improving. One mindset closes the door, the other opens new possibilities. Many of the world's greatest achievements happened because someone refused to interpret failure as a final answer. They simply saw it as part of the learning process. And because they kept adjusting their strategy, they eventually found the right path. So if something in your life has not worked out, do not immediately assume the dream is impossible. Instead, pause for a moment. Look at the experience carefully. Ask yourself what it revealed. What lesson is hidden in that moment? What change could make the next attempt stronger? Because sometimes the difference between failure and success is not talent. It is perspective. One person sees failure and walks away. Another person sees failure and learns from it. One person closes the book. Another person turns the page. And that single difference changes everything. So the next time something goes wrong, do not label it as the end. Label it as feedback. Use it to adjust your strategy. Use it to improve your preparation. Use it to sharpen your thinking. Because every lesson you gather from failure moves you one step closer to success. Remember this, failure does not mean you are incapable. Failure simply means the method needs improvement. And once you are willing to change the method instead of abandoning the mission, success becomes only a matter of time. 5. Use failure as fuel for your comeback. There comes a moment in life when everything feels like it has fallen apart. A moment when the effort you gave, the hope you carried, the dream you believed in suddenly collapses. Maybe a goal didn't work out. Maybe a plan failed. Maybe you trusted the wrong people. Maybe life simply hit you harder than you expected. And in those moments, it is easy to feel defeated. It is easy to feel like the story is over. But here is something powerful that many people eventually discover. Failure does not have to be the end of your story. In fact, for many people, failure becomes the beginning of their greatest comeback. Some of the strongest, most successful individuals you will ever see did not rise because life was easy. They rose because they refused to stay down after falling. They refused to allow disappointment to destroy their determination. Instead, they made a decision. They turned failure into fuel. Think about fire for a moment. Fire needs fuel to grow. Without fuel, it fades. But when you add fuel, the flame becomes stronger. Failure can work the same way in your life. If you allow disappointment to control you, the fire of your dreams slowly fades. But if you choose to use that disappointment as energy, something powerful happens. Your motivation grows stronger. Your determination becomes sharper. Your focus becomes clearer. Failure begins to transform into fuel for your comeback. Many people who achieve extraordinary success carry a story that began with a painful moment, a rejection, a loss, a mistake, a failure that once made them question everything. But instead of giving up, they made a powerful choice. They used that moment as motivation. They told themselves something important. I will rise again. They allowed the pain of failure to become the energy that pushed them forward, because failure can teach something powerful. It shows you how much the dream truly matters to you. If something fails and you immediately walk away, maybe the dream was never that important. But if you fall and something inside you still says, try again, that voice is powerful. That voice is determination, and determination can move mountains. Failure also removes illusions. It forces you to face reality. It shows you the weaknesses in your approach. It reveals where growth is needed. And once you understand those lessons, you return stronger, you return wiser, you return more prepared than before. That is what a comeback truly is. A comeback is not pretending the failure never happened. A comeback is learning from the failure and rising again with greater strength. Imagine a boxer in a fight. Sometimes they get knocked down. For a moment, everything seems lost, but the fight is not over. The boxer stands up. They adjust their strategy. They protect themselves better. They fight smarter. And sometimes the person who was knocked down becomes the one who wins the match. Life works the same way. Getting knocked down does not end the fight. Staying down does. Your comeback begins the moment you decide to rise again. The moment you decide that failure will not define your future. The moment you decide that disappointment will become your motivation. Think about how powerful that mindset is. Instead of asking, "Why did this happen to me?" you begin asking, "How can I come back stronger?" Instead of focusing on what you lost, you focus on what you can build next. Instead of seeing the end, you begin to see a new beginning. And something remarkable happens when people adopt this mindset. Their energy changes, their focus sharpens, their determination grows. They work harder than before. They prepare better than before. They push themselves beyond the limits they once believed were impossible. And eventually, their comeback begins to take shape. Slowly. Step by step, progress returns, confidence rebuilds, momentum grows again. One day, the same failure that once felt devastating becomes the moment that transformed everything. Because it forced growth, it forced strength, it forced determination, failure became the turning point. So if you are standing in the middle of a difficult moment right now, if something in your life feels like a painful setback, remember this truth. You are not finished. Your story is not over. Failure may have knocked you down, but it does not have the power to keep you there. Only you decide whether you stay down or rise again. And when you choose to rise, when you choose to transform disappointment into determination, when you choose to use failure as fuel instead of fear, your comeback becomes unstoppable. Because the strongest people are not those who never fall. The strongest people are those who fall, learn, rise again, and refuse to quit. So take the lessons from your failure. Take the pain and turn it into power. Take the disappointment and turn it into determination. Let it fuel your effort. Let it sharpen your focus. Let it remind you why you started. And step forward again with courage. Because sometimes the greatest victories in life are not the ones that come easily. They are the ones that come after the hardest fall. And when that victory finally arrives, it will mean more than you ever imagined, because you will know the truth. Your failure did not destroy your dream. It fueled the comeback that made your victory possible. By now, one thing should be clear. Failure is not the enemy most people believe it is. It is not the end of the road. It is not proof that you are incapable, and it is not a sign that your dreams are impossible. Failure is simply part of the journey. Throughout this message, we explored 5 powerful truths. We learned that failure is not the end, it is the lesson. Every mistake carries knowledge that prepares you for the next opportunity. We discovered that every successful person has a failure story. Behind every achievement are moments of rejection, doubt, and persistence. We saw how failure builds strength and character. Challenges develop resilience, discipline, and emotional toughness that comfort never could. We understood the importance of changing our perspective on failure. Failure is not defeat, it is feedback that helps us adjust and improve. And finally, we realized that failure can become the fuel for our greatest comeback. The most powerful success stories often begin after someone refuses to stay down. When you look at failure through this lens, everything changes. Failure stops being something to fear. Instead, it becomes something that shapes you, teaches you, and prepares you for the success ahead. Because the truth is simple, success is not built on perfect moments. Success is built on persistence. It is built on standing up after falling. It is built on learning from mistakes instead of being defined by them. Everyone who achieves something meaningful walks through moments of uncertainty and failure. The difference is not talent. The difference is the decision to continue. So if you are facing failure right now, if a dream feels delayed, if things have not worked out the way you hoped, do not see this as the end. See it as part of the process that is shaping you into the person capable of achieving your goals. Learn the lesson, adjust your path, strengthen your mindset, and keep moving forward. Because the road to success is rarely straight, it twists, it challenges, it tests your determination. But for those who refuse to quit, every failure becomes a stepping stone toward something greater. One day, when you finally reach the place you have been working toward, you may look back at the moments you once called failures, and you will realize something powerful. Those moments were not stopping you, they were preparing you. So stand up again, try again, grow again. And remember this, failure is not the end of your story. It is the chapter that makes your success possible.